Welcome aboard, everybody. This is your captain speaking, Captain Cosmo. Today we're starting a fun new series called Check Ride Prep. It's a series that I decided to put together to help me study as I get ready to take my very own check ride to get my private pilot's license, or PPL. Now, let me start with that I am not a certified flight instructor. As I said, I'm going for my PPL. And this is in no way a ground school for actual flying. What I plan on doing here is going on a flight in the simulator, discussing the things that I am doing. And when we hit our cruising altitude, I'm going to start going through the chapters of the PHAK, or the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. I have found that when people ask me questions about something related to flying, I find that when I explain it back to them, it helps me to remember everything better, and I'm hoping that maybe it'll help you too. My plan is to go chapter by chapter in the book, of which there are 17, and do a different video for each, so that maybe if you need a refresher on a particular chapter, you can easily jump to it. At the end of the PHAK, I will jump into the FAR AIM, which covers the FAA regulations that you will need to know for your exam. I'm thinking that the FAR AIM video may be a live stream where you can ask questions or correct me as well. Like I said, I'm not a professional pilot. I am learning too, so I could use all the help I can get. I also have a great little oral exam guide that I can do a live Q&A on too. So without further ado, let's get into it and see what the skies bring us. So I'm starting this series on a rather stormy day here in Los Angeles, and of course I'm grounded. IFR conditions for most of the area, so there's no way we would be allowed to fly today. So usually I like to use the live weather feature in the simulator, but for our purposes, I'll be using the Clear Skies preset. I have other videos that I'll post soon where I play the role of a storm chaser and I go into the big storms to see what's happening inside. But not here. We are flying strictly VFR. Alright, so I've plotted a course using Navigraph, and for our first flight we will be going from Kilo Victor November Yankee to Kilo Lima Alpha Sierra, which is Van Nuys, and that's my home airport. So I thought it'd be fun to start there since I know the area. Future videos, I will plan flights from different parts of the world, and we'll find different airports to land at and have some fun with that. Now, what I have been training in is a Piper PA-28 Archer, and also the Warrior as well. But I have this great Archer that I got in the store and felt like it would be the best plane to do this course in. I will be going over all the things about this plane and how to fly it. I have yet to fly anything else as a pilot in command, so I'm not totally sure of how they operate. If you would like a video on any other plane, like the Cessna 172 or the Diamond DA-50, just let me know in the comments and I'll find their operating handbook and checklist and see what we can come up with. So, with that said, let's do a little look around. Here's the cockpit, and this is I'm very familiar with. And I have with me the checklist that I go over when we are getting ready to fly. So I'll go through it this one time, and then in future videos we'll just kind of skip over this and just get underway, start flying. So first off, we have our inspections. We want to make sure that they're current. Any ADs, directives, repairs, things like that, if all that's current. Then we have our aero documents, which is our airworthiness certificate, our registration, our operating handbook, and our weight and balance documents. Make sure that they are on board. They should always be on board whenever you fly. Then we have our compass correction card, which is this right here. right underneath the magnetic compass. I don't. Hopefully you can see my arrow going around there. Then we would record our hobs in the book. And I looked around this plane, and I'm not sure where the hobs are on this model. Usually some of the planes, it'll be over here. Sometimes it's down here. I guess it's wherever they can find room to put it in. But I don't see it on this plane here. But what hobs are is kind of like an odometer for the engine, per se. I mean, there is an actual odometer that you also write down, which is down here. Not that's the parking brake, but it'll be in your tachometer. But the hobs, basically, when you start the airplane, it starts to roll. It starts to count up, and that's usually what we record at the end of the day. You have your hobs out and your hobs in. So I would write my hobs out when I get into the plane, and then when I land the plane and stop the engine, I'll write the hobs in, and based on what that is, 1.2 hours, 1.7 hours, hey, even more, that's what you would write down in your logbook is your flight time. And yes, a lot of flight time is calculated while you're on the ground, not just when you take off and land. So, moving on, we have our parking brake, which is right here. We want to make sure that it is set. That is in the set position now. Our ignition, which is the key right here. Make sure it's in the off position. As you can see, it says off right there, all the way to the left. Make sure that our mixture, which is the red knob, make sure that that is idle, and that your throttle is in the idle position as well. Then we want to jump over to our avionics. Make sure that this is turned off. You don't want this turned on when you start the engine, because there could be an electrical surge, and these are delicate instruments, and it's better to start the plane. Once it's running, then you turn on the avionics, and it only takes a couple seconds, maybe 30 to 60 seconds for all the electronics to turn on. Then we have our circuit breakers, which are right here. We run over the circuit breakers usually with the back of our hand. Make sure that none of them are popped out. And this is cool that you can see 2 of them are popped out, but they are listed as or labeled in-op. So if any of these other ones were popped out, you might push them back in, and once you start the plane, if they pop back out, then like the anti-collision light here, if that's popped out, you might be able to take a look at it and say, okay, something's going on, there's a short somewhere. Make a determination if it's something that you absolutely need to fly with. Say nav 1 and nav 2, there, you've got 2 radios. So if the first comm is in and the second one just keeps popping out, you can still fly with 1 radio. It makes it a little more difficult sometimes, trying to get the ATIS while you're flying in somewhere. You have to kind of overlay both transmissions and listen, and sometimes there's a lot of radio chatter, so you just kind of listen to the ATIS about 400 times until you get the whole thing. Alright, let's go back out, and next on our list, the pitot-static system. So, alright, right here, these 2 little kind of button things. You press each one of those, and what that does is it equalizes the pressure in the pitot-static system to the pressure altitude that you're at currently at the airport. All right, next we have our windows. Want to make sure that they're clean, want to have a big dirty window and you can't see through it because you gotta see where you're going, especially in VFR. Flight controls free and correct, so let's bring our yoke back here. So we would go, you know, left full rudder, and you look out the window. Turn the camera so you can look out the window. So you see left is up, and then you'd look at the other side and see that right is down. Then you turn it the other way and you say right is up, and look over here, left is down. Alright, and then you look in the back and you can see the stabilator moving. Those are your elevator controls. And then if we look back down, we can see our rudder pedals. Those are moving fine. So you say, okay, flight controls free and correct. So get rid of the yoke again. So then at this point, then we would turn on our battery master. And we take a look at our fuel. So here's our fuel. We've got about maybe 12, 13 gallons in each tank. So we turn on our fuel pump, and now you can see that it's going up. So you know that fuel's getting to the engine. So I would turn that back off. And then we do our exterior lights. So I turn on my landing light, my anti-collision light, and this one, I think up is for the nav lights. So then we get out of the airplane and we'd walk around the airplane. So there's our landing light. Red is for port side, or left. Green will be for our starboard side, or right. So you can see there's our strobe anti-collision light, and then this is our nav light in the very back as well. This all comes in handy when you are up in the air and you see, you know, a red light coming at you. You're not sure which way the plane's coming because it might be far away. It's night, it's dark, and once you're up at cruise altitude, you don't have your landing light on. So if you see a red light on the left and a green light on the right, or you just see a white light, steady white light, then you know the plane's going away from you. But if you see the red light on the right and a green light on the left, you know the plane's heading towards you. So that's what those guys do there. So then at this point we would jump back in, and I would turn off all of the power so that we can save electricity in the battery. Oh, also, while you're outside on that first time, one of the reasons why I open up the little side window here is I like to hit the stall warning, which is right here on the wing. It's just a little lever. You just kind of click it, you hear the noise inside the cockpit, and you know that's working. So now that we are back inside our airplane, I would then pull the flaps all the way up, which currently they are all the way up. So I'll put them down and we'll pull them all the way back, and that makes the flaps go to full 40 degrees. Go outside and we can see that they're down like that. So this is one, actually, so that's 10 degrees, 25 degrees, and 40 degrees. And then we use this during our walk around. We go and we test the flaps, we test the ailerons, we move the stabilator up and down to make sure that it is working freely. Now there's a difference in some of the planes. I'll tell you right here. This is a stabilator, so the whole thing moves as your elevator for your pitch control. And then these are trim tabs, which kind of go up and down when you're when you're flying around. See, I'm moving them now with my trim wheel, and it's very slight, and it's to help you maintain a certain speed when you're up there, so you're not constantly pulling back. Like if I'm finding that I'm nosing down while I'm flying, and I want to pull back on the yoke so that the airplane stays level. Well, instead of constantly pulling back, what I would do is I would slowly put the trim to nose up, and then release my grasp on the yoke, so that pretty soon it levels out, and then you can check your speed and make sure you're retaining the speed that you want. And if not, then you can change your trim a little bit to go nose down, so that you can gain a little bit of speed or lose a little speed by trimming upwards. So outside of that, we have all of our pre-flight inspections that we would go through. We would do our full walk around, and that would be checking the right flap, the aileron, the wing, making sure that's all good. Make sure your tie downs and your chocks are gone. Check your fuel vents. There's little underneath the wing, there's these little valves that you would use, a little jar, and it's called a sump, and you collect some of the fuel, maybe about an inch, and then you can look at it against a white background like the side of the plane, and you'll see if there's a separation. If there's water in the fuel, you'll see it separate, because water and fuel don't mix. So if you saw that, then you would have to keep draining until you saw no water left in there. You don't want to take off with water in the fuel tanks. And water can be caused by condensing vapors if it's a hot day, and you had the fuel tank open and it got some warm, moist air in there, and then you closed it off. Well, it'll evaporate and create some condensation on the inside, and then of course that water will sink down to the bottom, because water is heavier than fuel. So there's actually multiple places on a Piper. There's one right about here on this side, there's one on the other side about the same area, and then there's one right next to the engine as well. You would check your fuel quantity at this point. I have like a dipstick that can tell me how many gallons I have in there. You can also open it up. If you got a full tank, you'll look and you'll, oh, it's a full tank, So that's important, and we'll get into that more in the navigation chapter, because we're going to go over how you know how much fuel you want to bring, because sometimes you don't want to have a full tank. Now, there's 24 gallons max in each of these wings. There is no center fuel tank on a Piper. They're just in the wings, and it's 24 total. So you have about 48 gallons, and then there's going to be some fuel left in all the lines and the pumps and stuff, and inside the engine and things like that. But 48 gallons is a full tank, and if we calculate that out, it's 6 pounds per gallon, and that comes up to 288 pounds. So say when you're doing your weight and balances, which we'll go over later, and you find that, well, you're just 10 pounds too heavy for that you go over the max weight of max takeoff weight. So then you'll find that what you need to do is maybe dump 2 gallons. So you would have to then pull 2 gallons out of the airplane and bring yourself down under that max weight, so that you can safely take off. Now, there is going to be some fuel that's burnt while you're sitting here setting up your navigation on your GPS or going through your pre-flight and stuff like that, and then taxiing all the way down to the beginning of the runway. and doing your run up. But it's probably going to be maybe a gallon. So if you're just, you think about it in terms of weight, 6 pounds per gallon. Okay, I'm 10 pounds overweight, might as well just dump 2. But you also know then I'm only going to say Santa Barbara, and that is only going to be a 45-minute trip, and you calculate out that it's 10 gallons per hour that you're burning, plus your taxi and takeoff fuel, so add another like 3 gallons or something. You really only need around 13 gallons technically to fly. Now there are rules also when it comes to fuel, that you need to have a minimum of 30 minutes worth of fuel. So if you know that the airplane burns about 10 gallons per hour, then you would need to get have an additional 5 gallons on top of whatever it's going to take to do your trip. At night, you need 45 minutes. So that is fuel. Then we would go around, we would check the tires, make sure that the struts on the tires, which are kind of hard to see on this because they got the wheel fairings, but normally you can see the struts, and you want about a 4.5-inch clearance, which kind of put your first 4 fingers together, and that's close to about 4 inches there, so a little bit more than that. Then there's also a little tube that comes down right here that kind of it allows excess gas when on the very hot days the gas can expand. You have full fuel tank, you don't want the tank rupturing because the gas is expanding inside there, so it kind of goes out and it drips down onto the ground there. Then we would go into our engine here, which on an Archer, the only thing you can do is, without taking off the entire cowling here, you open up this little door right here, and that's your oil. And you would check your oil, make sure that you're between 6 and 8 quarts of oil. And if you're lower than that, definitely add some oil, because oil is very important. Oil removes particles from the system while it's moving around, and then it goes through a filter, so those particles will kind of get filtered out. It cools, it lubricates, it does a lot of things. So you want to make sure that you have enough oil. At this point, then we might check our propeller. And we'll run our fingers along the blade, along both sides of the blade. Make sure that there's no sharp edges. Sharp edges kind of denote that there could be disaster coming soon. There might be a small crack forming. Little bumps and dings, not as important, but the sharp edges, you want to make sure that those are good. You check your spinner here, make sure that it's good and fastened on. There's little bolts that go all the way around it. Make sure that those are good. You check these little areas here, which are the air inlet areas, and then there's one down here. It's kind of, let's see if we can see it. Yeah, right here. If your plane's been sitting for a long time, it's good to check it. It might have a little nest in there, a little critter or something might have found a nice warm place on a cold night because you just flew in last night, and they scamper out, and oh, it's nice and warm in there. Just make sure there's nothing in there. Again, here's the strut. So you can see the strut on this one. You can't on this one because the fairings go all the way up. So check the strut. This is where I usually remove the tire chocks as well. And then on this side, which on an Archer you can't really do because, like I said, the cowling doesn't open up. On the Warrior, both sides of the cowling open up and you have full access to the engine. But then the brake reservoir is right up here, and you would normally check that. Then we go around and we basically do the same thing on this other side, on this other wing. And then as we continue, you just keep doing a 360 around the plane. Just take a look at it, make sure that everything looks good. Okay, let's check our antennas. This is a comm antenna. This is your ELT antenna, emergency locator. You usually have GPS right up here. It's going to be one of the highest spots on the airplane. Now this right here, see these two? This is easy to remember. This is a VOR antenna, and it looks like a V. So easy enough, right? VOR looks like a V. And then we come around, we kind of check out the stabilator and make sure that there's no dings and stuff. Make sure it's moving free and correct, and everything's good there. And we keep moving around and keep looking at everything. Okay, everything looks good. Make sure your baggage door is closed, things like that. And you're done with your walk around. So now we can go back inside the plane, and we are set to go.